Welcome to our Q&A discussion with Todd, the filmmaker of When It Breaks, and also special surprise guest, Conrad, who is joining us from his RV.
RV.
So welcome. I hope everyone here had a chance to watch the film before this discussion. If not, you're able to rent and also purchase the film at any time. I guess first, let's kick this off and have Todd and Conrad introduce themselves. Todd, you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Todd too. I think I know most of the folks here, but I made this film, and previous to this film, I had made several music videos for Conrad and his band, Possessed by Paul James. Yeah, and I'm here in Chicago. It's raining and it's about 30 degrees, and so it's an indoor Mother's Day for our family.
Thanks, Conrad.
Now I go, okay, I'm Conrad. I'm in my RV because I'm waiting a COVID test result, actually. And so my wife wanted to make me locked in the RV. So I've been living in the RV for 4 days. I live in Kerrville, Texas. It's sunny. When the family goes in the house, I work in the backyard, take care of the chickens and the ducks, and work in the garden. And I'm a school teacher. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. And I'm Ariel Wan. I'm the director of marketing at the Michigan Theater. My background is the screening room that's in our theater. It's a 200-seat theater. Our theater is a 1928 historic movie palace. So there's a 1,600-seat theater, and then this one is our screening room, which is 200-seat. If we were able to do this film in person, we would probably be in here. So I thought that'd be a really cool background. We actually showed this film in person down the street, it's a block away from the Michigan Theater. It's a 1942 Art Deco movie theater that we did the screening there in October last year. It feels like a welcome. Thank you for joining. If you have questions, it sounds like you guys kind of all know each other, but if you have questions, type it into the chat, or you can click on the participants icon and you can raise your hand from there if you want to ask an audible question. Otherwise, feel free to type into the chat. We're going to be a small intimate group, so just feel free to chime in. We're going to have a friendly conversation, 30, 45 minutes, however long this will go. But let's kick off. I always like to kick off the question with, the filmmaker's inspiration for why he made this film. So take it away, Todd.
So first, thanks to Ariel and the Michigan Theater. Michigan Theater did our screening, and I would just say real quick, obviously they're currently closed because everything is closed. So if you go, maybe Ariel can give us a link to, you can donate directly to the Michigan Theater if you wanted to give them a little bit of money. And today's the last day, or tomorrow's the last day. If you buy or rent the film using the Michigan Theater code, we'll donate. It's almost half of the proceeds from whatever we make off of those sales will go back to the Michigan Theater. I'm from Southeastern Michigan, so when I was in high school and college, like Michigan Theater is sort of where I lived to go see films. So we appreciate them, and well, hopefully, we'll all make it through this crazy thing together. But yeah, so to your question about how did the film come about and sort of what was the driving force, I guess, I had known Conrad for a long time. I think I saw him play in 2008, and then we became friends, and then we made some music videos for Possessed by Paul James. In fact, we started making music videos for Possessed by Paul James before Conrad and I were ever hung out. I think we were just making them long distance, Chicago to Texas. So we did some of that, and I really liked the music. I was a fan of the music, and I thought Conrad's story was really interesting, that he was a special ed teacher by day and was doing music on the side. And of course, like any And I was younger then. So like any younger rabid music fan, you're like, just quit. You should quit teaching and you should go do music because art is the only thing that matters. And we should all go do that. So that was my, that's how I came to Possessed by Paul James in the beginning. And then over time, like I started to have kids and my friends started to have kids. And so you start to get more involved in like the important things in a kid's life, like education and public education and the community that you're living in. And so I always wanted to do some sort of film or something about Conrad. So when he said he was leaving teaching due to like teacher burnout and all these things that come along with teacher burnout, I thought, well, there's a really interesting narrative. It's not, you know, we have a very saturated marketplace of documentaries and things about white guys playing the guitar, singing about different stuff.
White guy.
So we didn't want to do that again, just that again. So anyway, this seemed like a bigger story, right? Like this is something that impacted people who maybe weren't into that music scene even, or did, you know, it just had a bigger impact. So, and I think, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I approached Conrad about the idea of following them to make this story in this film, I think Conrad could see the bigger picture that like, it's weird to let somebody do that, but maybe, you know, you look at the teacher burnout numbers and you realize you can't be the only person going through this. So if we could make an interesting story that spoke to the troubles that people were facing in public education while tying in music and family, you know, to me, that had all the ingredients of an interesting story. And it was more dynamic than just, here's like a great music documentary. Like it's that, but it's all these other things tied in. So that was the idea behind it. And then it was making it happen and like convincing everybody to go along with it, all those other stuff, all those other parts. But that was the impetus.
Yeah. And then Conrad, you know, it's great that you are able to join us for this Q&A, because I feel like a lot of people had questions for you when we had the screening in October. And so, you know, as a, you know, what we call in industry an on-screen subject, you know, what was it like having Todd be like, hey, I want to follow you around and make a documentary about you?
You know, like initially intrusive. You know, we're not a family trying to be the Kardashians, you know. But Todd's a trusted buddy. We've been, like he said, we've known each other for a while. We know we're the types of friends where they send us cheese on holidays. So, you know, when you cross that barrier of friendship where they start sending you cheese, it's a good friendship, man. That doesn't happen with everybody. So I knew that he would not exploit our family. Jenny, I think really what made it happen is that Jenny, my spouse, was all for it. She thought, well, yeah, it'll be great. We'll have a great old time. You know, it provided more purpose to us being on the road, maybe, possibly. And, you know, she likes company. So Todd and Logan's on here. I see Logan smiling on this thing. We're on the road with us a good bit. Obviously, for me, I was just trying to figure out, do I want to be a school teacher still, or do I want to try a different trade? And the crazy thing about how this all happened and what's happened in Texas since that documentary explains a lot. And I won't go into great detail. I don't want to be long-winded. And let me know if you can't hear me, because I see the video lagging sometimes. But when we took the year off, it was the year just before where Texas was found guilty of not following federal law. Like, there was a reason things were getting so bad. Texas wasn't following federal law. And for that to all come about, it explained a lot, and it reaffirmed to be a teacher. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I heard you mention Logan is here. Logan, what did you do on the film?
He drank.
I did a lot of driving. Drove to Texas a few times, and I don't know, through several states. Ran some camera, ran some second audio, or I guess field audio. A lot of following Todd around and saying, "Hey, what can I do for you?"
Very cool.
Logan,
What did you learn from your experience following Conrad
What,
around?
what did I learn?
Yeah.
You know, from a technical side, like just that run and gun style of shooting video, and capturing stories,
Mhm.
was something that I'm not necessarily accustomed to. I work for PBS here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's my full-time gig, and you know, it's kind of a 9 to 5 for the most part. I do our underwriting. I produce our underwriting credits, so it's kind of more controlled. It was a exercise in chaos sometimes.
I feel like that's like being a teacher. I
Yeah, yeah.
imagine. So Todd, you've had this film out for a little bit, and we kind of talked a little about the other places that you have exhibited this film. What kind of conversations do you find people are having after you show When It Breaks?
I think it's safe to say that the universal conversation after the film, because obviously the film speaks to educators and teachers, and we've had a chance to screen it in Colorado, in Michigan, in Kentucky, in Texas, in Minnesota, and a lot of teachers come to the film, and then the conversation afterwards, which is very exciting as a filmmaker, is that teachers feel that their story is being honestly represented in the film, that we're not dramatizing the difficulties teachers are facing. Like, this is a pretty genuine experience across the board, for a lot of teachers, both in special ed and general ed. So that conversation tends to be a lot about that. There's a lot of, the film doesn't offer a ton of answers per se. It was meant to be sort of a conversation starter, and then where do we go from there? So that tends to be the conversation after the film. Is one, there's some empathizing and some sympathizing, because I think it's good to have a space to do that, and if the film helps to do that, that's awesome. And then there's some talk about what can we do, like, when we were in Ann Arbor, Fred Klein, the head of the Ann Arbor teacher union, was there, and he was awesome. He had all kinds of suggestions about how can we make bigger impacts in public education, and how can we make the teacher union stronger, and how can we make people aware of what teachers deserve and what teachers need to do their job. So yeah, that tends to be, it is interesting to show it, because it's also a music film, but we're mostly, educators are a large part of the audience. So the focus does tend to be around, obviously, the education component. And it was great. Like, we've also had Easter Seals at a couple screenings, and Easter Seals has been very excited about, like, especially where they can jump in terms of students who are getting ready to leave special education, where Easter Seals wants to jump in and sort of be that, I'm going to miss the exact wording, but helping with that bridge from leaving the school into going into post-school life. So that tends to be the conversation, generally speaking. Yeah. Conrad.
Yeah, Conrad.
I'm virtually raising my hand. See, so I look at it differently, because I look at it at the micro level, and I think that's kind of a teacher's perspective. Elaine Holmes is on this as well, who is wrapping up her doctorate. She soon will be Dr. Holmes. She's a dear friend and a career educator as well, up in Fort Collins, Colorado. Her and her lovely mother are on here. Happy Mother's Day, Jeannie. And for me, at the micro level, it provided a lot of answers. It really did. I think that's a teacher's perspective, because all we can control generally is like 200 square feet in a building, and anywhere from, say, 20 to 100 students that come through our classroom doors. For me, it provided further convictions and understanding of what's going on. It provided a second breath of a teaching career already into 20 years, starting as a volunteer at 19. The statistics are real. It's a 3 to 5 year average of educators in the trade. That's the national average. And I'd argue that it's even lower now, because studies show that people aren't getting into this trade any longer in undergraduate work, you know. So for me, it was a good break to breathe. If you have that opportunity as a teacher, I say do it before you leave the trade entirely. Take a breath and evaluate, what do you value? And so in that regard, it's been very impactful. And I've talked to still, you know, we're still talking about education when we play. My story's pretty routine and old, you know, like, oh yeah, we've heard you say that before. So the conversations still happen after the shows. It's still going on. Todd and Logan just happen to be there with cameras and microphones. So.
Yeah, I wonder, Conrad, I know that after the film and what you're doing currently, you went back to teaching. So I guess we kind of know if you went into being a rock star versus a teacher or a rock star teacher. What
Yeah.
what kind of made you decide to go back to teaching?
Yeah, number one, it was the sustainability for the family. You know, I think every family is different, and some people have that ability to balance it and do well when music becomes the profession. Our family needed us to be there. You know, I internally, I knew I did not want to be away from Jonah and Kai and Jenny for 20 days on end, you know, or 30 days on end. I knew that was not going to be a good equation for our family. Maybe it's about having two boys. I don't know. But when you have two boys, you kind of need to be close proximity because they can blow stuff up, man. So I wanted to be there for my family initially, you know, and then getting back into it, I knew it's also, I'm generally an introvert. Like I like to pull away from crowds. I like to pull away from a lot of busyness. And what's great about teaching is that there's a structured routine that I get my consistent community and my consistent interaction with people in a general positive way, even with all the conflict in special ed. And I miss that. There's something about education that I really love the identity of it. I'm very happy saying I'm a school teacher. It feels like, yeah, I'm a school teacher, you know? And those two leading factors, the passion of the job and being close to the kids and Jenny.
Do you think you've brought back with you any of the things that you learned from all the conversations that you had with people on tour, and how you're able to, if you're able to kind of make some changes and, you know, create that impact in the education environment that you're in?
Yes. That's a hard yes, because then you get a perspective, you know, that adage where it says, act locally, think globally. In teaching, it's the trade itself works against us because we're so ingrained in our small little world. You know, all the fires that we have to put out, it's within that small square footage of what we can control. And we can't always reach out to one another across state lines to understand what's your problem, what's your plight. I think the last 2 years, we've seen a national voice really come from teachers unions and independent states that have no representation, just speaking out more, and then going on that journey, knowing that my same grief, where sometimes I hide in my closet at home because it gets so hard. I know that there's probably at least 2,000 other teachers doing it the exact same way that day, because you get to really hear the same story. You know, it's a very similar universe across the country, across the world for teachers. It really is.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from, is it Dagan or Dagan? Dagan. Yeah. The other option. So Dagan had a really great question. He's actually zooming in from Hawaii, so I imagine your weather must be a lot better than everyone here. But Dagan's a full-time teacher. He's also an independent musician. And his question for Conrad is, what skills as a musician and creative do you bring to the classroom as part of building your craft as a teacher?
Great question, and welcome from Hawaii. That's great. I love that. Party at Dagan's house right after the Zoom meeting. with social distancing. So yeah, great question. Engagement. You know, there's any effective teacher knows their audience. They know their student body. They know their skill sets, their learning, their diagnosis, their attention, their style of learning, kinesthetic. Are they a body movement learner? In music, you know, I think to be an effective quote unquote performer in music, you really do need to hear your audience. You need to see who's out there in the gathering. I do that. I constantly in the classroom, constantly knowing the different communication styles. The really cool thing about music and the opportunity to kind of take us about from time to time, it's also a great icebreaker with students. Greatest story this past year, well, 2 years, I guess, was this wonderful guy, Elijah Flores. I started working with his senior year, a year and a half ago. And only teenager I ever knew that knows R.L. Burnside, Gatemouth Brown, T-Model Ford. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Like, these guys are Fat Possum label guys. And you don't hear a 17, 18-year-old Mexican-American kid living down in Kerrville, Texas, knowing that music. Well, this kid loved it. And he was blown away. I showed him the poster we had with T-Model Ford and the picture we had with T-Model Ford. Music's been a great icebreaker for students, especially at the high school level, that have already closed themselves off, you know, and you're trying to find avenues to really open up their hearts and minds. So engagement with the audience and student body and icebreakers have been a wonderful, wonderful tool to use. Great question.
And so I was going to jump in for just a second. I was going to say, Conrad, so building off of that, could you talk a little bit about like the little seed, big seed, like what you guys are doing with students and music and all that?
Yeah, thank you. So following coming back into teaching, I taught back at an elementary school for 2 years in Bernie, where we were living, and then we moved back out here to Kerrville, just 40 minutes west here in Texas. And I've been working at the high school for the last 2 years. Well, the knuckleheads at Bernie told the knuckleheads at Kerrville that, hey, this guy Conrad's coming and he plays music. So when I got here, they knew I played music, and generally I try to keep it. I don't like to tell people I do it because I don't want to get in trouble as a teacher. Because in Texas, you know, we don't have bargaining rights. So if someone looks at it and sees some drunk, crazy person, you know, they're like, oh, and they give you the boot, and that's real. So I was so surprised the high school was so responsive to it. It gave us an outlet to be very open about the music. And lo and behold, we were able to start a nonprofit called Big Seed. And it specifically works with kiddos in the community. We're about like 60,000 as a county, you know, about 20 square miles. And we work with youth 23 years and younger with music, video, art, and those mediums. And that's been profound. Like, we're trying to show young people in this rural Texas community that you don't have to be a starving artist. You can find outlets in the arts. You can express yourself in a positive way, that still have grit, you know, still have grit in what you want to share. And that's been phenomenal. We've had festivals and pop-ups, and and we just got awarded a very strong grant that's going to continue to help us build this nonprofit. So thank you for letting me talk about that. That's bigseed.org.
Awesome. Joel Singer has his hand raised.
Ja, way Arbor.
Joel, do you have a question? Let's see. Oh, you might be muted if you are trying to talk. Oh, sorry, mic's not working. Skip me for now. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Elaine, I'm curious to know how you know Conrad and other people here. I'm really curious now.
Hi, hey everybody. Thanks for doing this. This is
Yeah.
my mom and I are big fans of Conrad. What we love about this movie, there's a bunch of different things, but thank you first of all for hosting this. This is very special. I too am a high school teacher, 23 years at the same school, very proud high school teacher, and this is my mom, Jeannie. We are very intertwined with these individuals. And what I love about the movie is that year, we probably saw Conrad, I don't know, at least 20 times that year. we followed him around, and we're just, you know, I'll never forget the first time I saw him, and I don't mean to offend anybody in the call, but I saw him at a very small barbecue in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I didn't know him at all. And he was playing music, and obviously when you see him play music, I mean, he's dynamic and phenomenal. But in between, in the banter, he looks around and he says, if there's any teachers in the room, get them drunk or get them laid. And I was like, oh my God, nobody ever gives a shout out to teachers, you know? And so that was like our introduction, if you will. And then just fully supportive of what these guys have done, this movie, this conversation. We got to host the opening in Fort Collins, Colorado, the worldwide opening, and had a bunch of teachers and members of the school board there. I really love the conversation. Again, I love the music, obviously, I love the man, but this Todd has talked a lot about this in some of his other conversations that he's done, this idea of teacher burnout and what's going on with public education, the strain. I think, you know, and I don't know, Conrad, if you want to talk about this, but I'll mention it a little bit. Obviously, in light of what's going on with COVID, education is reeling, to be honest. And right now we're just kind of touching the edge of it. As we're trying to close out our school years virtually through remote learning, which is very, very difficult. But now what we're hearing, and I don't know if anybody else is hearing this, but we have a very strong union here in Colorado, and the budget cuts are going to be absolutely devastating. And again, when we're talking about young teachers, we've already been told in our school district that all the P1s, the probationary, the first 3 years of probationary teachers, their contracts have already been cut. So they are now going to be teaching at 93%, or they'll be getting paid. They'll be working 100% because that's what teachers do, but they're not going to get paid. And so it's like already the budgets are going to be vicious. It's going to be really interesting time for educators this is not a bump in the road. This is a long-term downturn for educational funding, which is already struggling. So I think we need to continue to have these conversations. This movie is just an avenue, I think, for the conversations. I've seen the movie also in Austin. We saw the movie, wasn't it Austin? Where were we? Yeah. Denton, Texas. Yeah. Right. So we saw that conversation there. And again, a lot of it was special education. It was parents. It was other future educators. We were at a teacher's college there. Again, this is just a vehicle of this wonderful man and this music, and then this greater concern that is public education. So I don't know. We just are big fans. We were super stoked to be here today and see what y'all had to say. So.
Oh. Hey, I did want to, if I could reply to Elaine just real briefly about, you know, what's education look like right now. It looks very strange. And you know me, I'm going to dive into special ed to tell you where we're at. Like, for this conversation to reach at the congressional administrative level of, you know, the Federal Department of Education, where they had to clarify that they weren't going to suspend the federal guidelines of IDEA. So what that means, if you're not familiar with that acronym, that's the Individual Disability Education Act, right? So that was created, a framework created in the 50s, and then it got the acronym IDEA in the mid 70s. And that's the bread and butter of what allows a gamut of kiddos with a varied course of diagnosis receive equal services in public education. So for them to even acknowledge that, to say, hey guys, we're not going to cut it off, that freaks me out, because why are we even asking that question? That's a given. We should never be asking the question, should we still adhere to the guidelines of treating children with different disabilities equally, you know? And so that's where we're at right now. Special education is a gray area of services. I Zoom weekly with students, and I call grandparents and parents quite often. Sometimes the Zoom meetings explode into arguments, you know, and all you can do is try to help and mediate people's problems right now in the areas of, you know, significant behaviors. But when you talk about multiple disabilities, think about all the OT services, PT services, all the specialized services for kids with multiple disability. Right now, families are isolated, and that is what we really need to figure out. How will we address it? And I haven't heard a lot of solutions as of yet, outside of people just, you know, taking the necessary precautionary measures and risking and providing services. So yeah, it's a good point. You bring up a very good point, Elaine.
Yeah, I kind of want to ask you guys, for those that are teachers right now, is how is it going? Are you doing virtual lessons with students? Are they not learning right now? And have you guys gotten any emails or messages from parents just explaining how they finally realize that you guys do so much work that they can't do? And any teacher, Dagan or Conrad, Elaine? Yeah.
Well, I'll say that, I'll say not as a teacher, but as a parent of two children in elementary school who are now doing e-learning. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We had done this film. I had been close to Conrad. I had been close to teachers. So it wasn't that much of a shock to me. But, you know, the common sentiment, and sometimes it's sort of tongue in cheek or in jest a little bit, but parents, you like all the initial postings on Facebook that were like, I had no idea how hard it was to be a teacher, or like these sort of jokes about, you know, I'll never doubt my teacher again. Like maybe that's it. I mean, it would be amazing for that to be a sentiment that sticks around after COVID. Like, I think there generally are some teachers who really, or teachers, there are some parents who really, for whatever reason, were taking for granted a little bit, like the services that teachers were providing, not just education, but your kids are there for 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, or even more. So maybe that is a sentiment that will last past this, and that would be really incredible, because that would feed back into, you know, we're finishing up Teacher Appreciation Week. So like this idea that, yeah, like a national sentiment to really realize and admit how much teachers are doing above and beyond just educating our kids. Like, because my kids are home all day and I want to kill myself every day.
No, I was gonna jump in. I think it's appreciated what you're saying, but I think it's a little idealistic. I mean,
Of course.
when everyone gets back to it, families are going to be celebrating, and the kids are on the school buses, you know, with their heads down below their knees. That's, you know, but you know, with what we're doing, I'm seeing amazing things happening. That's what's really cool about people that decide to get into teaching, because even in a pandemic, and their interaction is solely on a computer screen with their teenagers or their tweens or their little ones, K-5, they're still doing amazing things. They really are. They're creating, you know, virtual videos and interactive applications of gaming, you know, for algebra and geometry. Like, I see it in my small district of a 20,000 person town. So I can only imagine, wow, there's amazing things happening in Fort Collins and in Chicago. That's the cool thing about it. Even though we're having a sizable percentage of our students not checking in, not doing their work, you know, and education agencies across the nation are going to have to figure out, how do we do that for grading and for graduation, and those that are missing 25 credits, but now they can't go to school. I still see teachers doing exactly what we do. We try to control what little we can control and persevere by the ripple effect, to dub the documentary, the ripple effect of trying to interact with young people. So even though it's horribly, horribly difficult and somewhat ineffective, there's still success stories that are happening.
Yeah. Dagan, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to defer to Elaine. I thought she was going to jump in there, but okay, I'm happy to share my thoughts. Well, a couple of things. There's a lot to unpack here, from, you know, how teachers are perceived to how permanent that viewpoint will be, to whether teachers are being truly valued within this environment we're in, to also how this gives us an opportunity to implement a lot of practices that can emphasize these 21st century learning skills that we're trying to foster in our classrooms. You know, I am a math teacher, and I consider myself a pretty progressive math teacher. Like, I don't do things by the book. I don't do things, you walk into my classroom, it's energetic, it's loud, there's kids in groups, there's kids on boards, there's lots of things going on. They're on iPads, they're sharing their work, they're talking about their work, they might be filming each other, describing problems, I mean, all that kind of stuff. And I really look at this environment as an opportunity to really put this type of learning in front of people who might push back against that as being, oh, that's too much change, and we want to test scores and standardized testing and all those things as being emphasized. It kind of blows a lot of that out the window, because it's like, well, how is that even realistic? And you're seeing that now with colleges, not taking ACT scores or SAT scores or AP exams being canceled. I think we're starting to see the conversation move towards, how do we really assess student learning, and how do we assess student application of skills, and what are those skills that we're trying to really teach our young people to take into their life outside of school. So, and I think it's also challenged some of my colleagues who maybe were a little, have been doing the same thing the same way for, in the box, trying to be careful with my language here, for maybe 20 years. And, that's hard, because I get it. My mom was a teacher for 25 years. I couldn't imagine her at the end of her career, I still have to show her how to use like a remote control. So I can't imagine her doing all this stuff that's going on. I get it, but I hope it inspires. And I've seen it in my colleagues. They've been really inspired. They've been asking me questions, and they've been really thinking from a whole different angle on how they can deliver instruction to students. So in that way, it's a really exciting time. And I hope it can fast forward some of these changes that have been so slow to happen, like almost education, we joke, it's the slowest moving industry in the entire of anything. I mean, the internet came out and it was in like 5 days, we're ordering things on Amazon. And education, it's still 1942, standing in desks with I could literally get an algebra book from 1942 and it'll look exactly the same. So it's like, I hope this can like speed things up, and we can start really implementing the things that these kids need to foster in this new world. So.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my second education themed Q&A that I've done in just like the last month. I did an education, I did a Q&A on this documentary called Underwater Dreams, which was about this rural high school town in, I think it was either in California or Arizona. And they competed in an underwater robotics competition, a collegiate one. And they were like the underdog, and they ended up beating Harvard, which was really cool. But the teachers that I had on the panel, they were from local independent schools, and just talking to them about how they engage with their students, and how they deal with these high school students with their like really big dreams, but also trying to get them to do this one project, because they were all first robotics teachers. It was just really inspiring. I have a young child. He's going to turn 2 years old. And so I'm only just beginning to start thinking about his education and his future, and how, reflecting on my own education that I received and all of the different other options that are available now. And then, talking to you guys and just hearing about your passion and your mindset about, what kind of teacher you want to be. It just makes me really hopeful to know that there are, really amazing teachers who really want to make a difference and want to do the best for my child, who's not even your child, and that just makes me feel really good about my kid's future and his future education, because right now I'm with him every single day, which also I want to die, but when I do send him off to learn about the world, I mean, like you said, like 8 hours a day, I mean, that's a long time. He's going to spend more time with his teachers than he probably will with me and my husband, because we work a lot as well. So it's just, I just want to say to you guys who are, teachers, just really thank you from the bottom of my heart for being in this profession. And, for Conrad going back into education as well. You know, I'm sure you are also going to be a rock star, a teacher, and the fact that, you know, like Dagan and Conrad can bring music into your education, like that's also so important. You know, like I found a job in nonprofit arts, so you know, arts and culture is also on that bottom totem pole of what's important to the government funding. So thank you guys so much. And Todd, thank you so much for, you know, following Conrad around and creating this really fascinating documentary that, you know, like you said, it's creating these conversations that don't normally follow a documentary about a white guy playing music. So yeah, I mean, thank you guys all so much. Before we wrap up, does anyone else have any other questions? I think Elaine wanted to talk a little bit, right?
Hey guys, just, you know, this has been an amazing time in teaching educational, I mean, in our world history, but again, as an educator, you know, we left for spring break on March 13th and they said to take your computers. And from that point on, we never went back, you know, and it was turned on a dime. I feel very blessed. I teach high school. So my students are digital natives, you know what I mean? They're living in this world anyways. So I'm not having to like retrain them, and we have one-to-one laptops in our district. And so I feel super grateful for that as well. I keep thinking I've got friends who teach elementary school, and I mean, trying to engage a little kid, you know, would be very difficult, but I'm so proud of my fellow educators like Dagan and Conrad have spoken of. It's just like, you know, we're pretty crafty, you know what I mean? We've been making do for a long time, shut up, and making do for a long time. And we've done that here too, you know, like I'm not a technical teacher. It's hilarious. I have a master's degree in educational technology, which all my students know is a total joke. Cause I'm like,
Finish your doctorate.
You know,
Get your doctorate done.
You know? So, but like I had to turn and burn with this, and I started a Google. My art as a craft, as a teacher, as an educator, is the relationships. And this is what I do when I get in my little screen and I'm doing my little Loom videos and I get all excited and my mom has to listen to me get all nerdy about stuff, you know, but we're still trying. We're still trying. And no matter what comes next year, no matter what the beginning of the next school year looks like, you're going to find that these innovative people who love, we do it for a love. You don't go into teaching because of freaking pay, you know what I mean? That's, you know, this is a passion, and I'm so proud of my fellow educators all over the country. You know, and I love when the parents are like, oh my God, how do you handle my children? I'm like, I've got classes of 37, bitch. I'm like, you want to try that? You know, I'm like, you've got 2 of them, you know? But I'm proud of my students too. And I've been reaching out, and some of them have fallen off, to be honest. You know, this is hard. I think what we're going to be dealing with a lot next year is like the mental repercussions of what has been happening. They have been isolated. They are terrified. This is, you know, I mean, that's more what I'm hearing from my high school students is I'm like, they're suffering, you know what I mean? And they're reaching out, and we're trying to reach back to them as best we can. So I don't know, this has been a really difficult time, and I'm really proud of everybody in this room who has anything to do with education. And including having small children. I can't imagine having small children at this point. It would be like, oh, so bless you parents. So, mine's 29. He's good to go. So
soon 30.
Yeah.
Well, and I just wanted to say, just to start wrapping up, but to Ariel's point, like with the film, obviously the point was to talk about difficulties that teachers are facing and why are we losing good teachers. But hopefully, what sort of the idea all along that we hopefully executed well is that we are supposed to leave on a high note, right? Like there is an inspiring story. And I think even if Conrad hadn't gone back to teaching at the end of the film, the fact that he was dedicated enough to take that message about teaching over into music, where there was no obligation to do that in any way whatsoever. Like, you know, so we just wanted to make this inspiring film. We want to talk about the problems, but if you make a film where everybody just dogs teaching and public education for an hour, nobody cares. And so hopefully there is some inspiration there, like for parents like us who are like, you know, I mean, I don't know if watching the film will have the same effect as making the film for 5 years, but when we interact with our teachers at our kids' school, it's completely different after having gone through this process. than it was before. And, you know, I would like to think I wouldn't take them for granted had we not done this, but man, talk about the just perspective on what is going on. And to now have teacher friends at our kids' school and have their kids in our kids' grade. And yeah, it's just nice to remember that it's a community, and the more that we can do to lift up that community, the better we'll all be. And it feels good to sit around and bitch for an hour or two, but hopefully it has, you know, a positive outcome there at the end.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
And I just, to reiterate, and I think Ariel posted the link, but I know nobody here is a fellow Michigander, but if you wanted to donate to the Michigan Theater for supporting us in the live screening and helping us get the word out about the sales and the rentals, that would be super awesome. They've been very helpful. And they were super important to me as a filmmaker growing up 20 years ago in Michigan. But yeah, so thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you. Aloha.